Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special, an actual special episode of Super Switch Headz. This is just a little extra episode that Patrick and I wanted to record. Speaking of, my name is David Howe.
My name is Patrick Nisley.
And today we kind of just wanted to do a spoiler discussion of Paper Mario, the Origami King.
Yeah.
We've both now beaten the game. And yeah, we just figured we'd do a little extra content for y'all because we love you so much.
One of the reasons I wanted to do this was because the Paper Mario series gets so much, I don't know what the word is, hatred, discussion about story in it. And I felt like this game had a really interesting story, or at least had strong story things going for it, even if there is still plenty of room for criticism. And so I think I just wanted to talk to somebody about that.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I also enjoyed the story of this game.
Yeah.
I don't know. First off, is this your first Paper Mario game as well?
And I think that has to be a big caveat, right? Like,
yeah.
I also, so I understand, if you're coming from some history and maybe the story was very different in the past, but I also, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like a lot of people grow up on games, and then like, if a game hits them when they're like, let's say 12 to 14 or something, and then that game continues in a series, people are like, well, that one was the best one. And there's
I was actually just listening to NVC's podcast this week, and they were kind of doing a retrospective of the Paper Mario series, and it's like, it's like everybody's favorite Paper Mario is the one that came out around when they were 12.
Yeah. It feels that way. So, there is like an actual study I've read about, not to like take us down some other road, but like about music.
This is our thesis. It's deconstruction of Paper Mario, the Origami King.
But about how like the music you hear when you're 14 is the music that most like you like the most for your entire life, or something like that. That like I think there's something about that for any kind of experience. There's that formative thing. So anyway, point being,
all that notwithstanding, what we're trying to say is like, we're not going to be judging this as a Paper Mario game, but just as the game that it is, because we haven't really played any of the others.
Yes. And I think to that end, I'd love to just kind of talk about story beats and how this game approaches that, which is kind of hard to separate from some of the other stuff. But like, everybody's critical, like, they made these suggestions that it can't have a story, like, or you know what I mean? There's all that talk about Mario games can't have stories and all that, but this game has a story. It just may not be Mario's story. you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I thought that this story was actually really effective in a lot of ways. I thought that it had this kind of like otherworldly, like B movie, like Body Snatchers horror vibe to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like with everybody being turned into, it just felt like very helpless a lot to me. And it was kind of trippy, I thought, the way that the world was set up, because there were whole sections that were totally taken over and origamified, right? By, I guess, Ollie. But then there were also tons of other sections where life was mostly going on like normal, but like a couple things were wrong.
Right.
That kind of gave me Clocktown, Majora's Mask vibes. You know what I mean?
Like the Shogun Studios was really overrun by Origami, for example, right? But like, the now I can't think of their names. The mole
toads.
What are the mole guys in Mario? Why can't I?
The Monty Moles.
Monty Moles. Yeah, like they were just kind of living their life.
Exactly. Right. And that was that like disconnect. Like while like people's bodies were being like destroyed and folded up and changed into other people, like I don't know, it just gave it a very weird kind of out of body vibe, which I thought was actually really effective.
Totally, the game's definitely a little bit weird when you start to analyze all that. But I think for like, I've heard this too, that suggested that somewhere around 10 years ago, Nintendo like created a Mario Bible, and that's why they won't mess with these Mario characters. Like they, because of theme parks and plushes and stuff, they want Mario to be Mario in every iteration and so on and so forth. So I feel like what they're doing here is taking some of the like lesser known enemies and playing around with them some, like Sniffets and stuff, you know what I mean? And then they're also taking, like you said, King Ollie and more importantly Olivia, and like having them be the characters that have like transformation and change and that kind of stuff. And
right. Well, it's like Mario is never going to have like an arc really over, and he's silent too, right? So it's not like you can do much with him. He's always been like this conduit for the player. And Luigi was also a pretty static character as well. So I agree with you there. I think some of that probably has to do with them. Like, I think the Super Mario Brothers movie still has ripple effects to this day. What Nintendo is like willing to do with that franchise at this point, because I think they took a massive swing and a miss and like have been kind of paying for it ever since. Not that like that's what people think of when they think of Mario,
Right.
but I can see the complaints that people have, and like kind of like the what the fuck reactions that people have to those recent comments, right, from the games director.
But he's been making all these different comments, and people have been having different things, and I think people are getting too upset about it, because I do think it is like Nintendo wants Mario to be Mario always or whatever. But anyway, I've already said that.
Yeah.
But I think the story, I found the story of Olivia compelling. I don't think Olivia is a super compelling character. Like, I heard some people say I don't like Olivia and whatever. I kind of found her interesting in some ways, but kind of boring in others. But I think you view her as like a new person or whatever, right? That's like experiencing the world for the first time. And she had that kind of innocence and joy. And then the evolution of up to her. I mean, this is spoilers episode, so
yeah. If you made it this far, if we haven't made it super clear, because we kind of maybe didn't at the beginning, but this is spoiler. Go for it.
So like, and then she sacrifices herself, right? And I teared up at the very end of this game because of her sacrifice, and it didn't click to me right away when she did it, because it's like, and then everybody's there, and I'm like, oh, Olivia's not there because she was also made by King Ollie. So if she undid everything he made, then she's gone too. And the
game was good, I think, about revealing like plot revelations at like a pretty consistent pace throughout. Like I think the first thing that actually made me care about her as a character was whenever Bobby killed himself. There's a lot of people killing themselves.
Right. I think there's like Bobby's arc and Olivia's arc are very similar in a lot of ways. Like they both kind of didn't know who they were, and that's why I think this is there's actually some masterful things going on here, right?
Yeah,
like they both didn't know who they were, kind of, and were kind of re-experiencing the world in Bobby's case, or experiencing it for the first time in Olivia's case, and they both ended up sacrificing themselves for the.
And Bobby also kind of has this great little arc too of like, not only like remembering like what his purpose is, in that like, oh, I lead a limited life and I'm going to die at some point, but also like, because he knew that, he was like more at peace with doing it, and he like felt like he made more out of the time that he was given because he knew when he was going to die. And so it was all this kind of like really like heavy shit that I was not prepared for or ready to experience in this game whatsoever.
It's such a weird balance of this game being so silly and bright and kind of like, paper crafting and kid friendly, and then Bobby and Olivia both kind of, and King Ollie's just sort of pure evilness or whatever. Like,
yeah. I mean, I feel like some of his like justification for who he was pure vanity. Almost, it seemed, you know what I mean, or like
it was weak,
or pride.
Yeah, it was a little weak. His being the villain was a little weak, but
I going back to just Olivia and her character, like it's still, I think it's funny that we're having such like a deep conversation about a Paper Mario game, but maybe it's not. If I'd played the other ones, maybe I would know more what I'm talking about. But I thought that one of the big wrenches that was thrown into her character too is like when we discover like the god of these characters, right? Which is like that Toad, right? The origami guy, who made Ollie in the first place,
right?
And then knowing that he created Ollie, and then Ollie created his quote unquote sister, who's really more of like a daughter, which is really kind of fucked up.
Right.
But that threw a big wrench into it as well, because it was then you understood why she like has some sympathy for the Ollie character, I guess, in some ways. And it also made it to when, that happens in so many games and in so many stories where they're like trying to convince the bad guy to like be good. Like that piece of information actually like made me think that maybe they could turn Ollie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then he just, of course, ended up being a total
Yeah.
villainous asshole. But yeah, I thought like the whole creator aspect of stuff in that game like really kind of made my head spin as well. Like, just like knowing your god and then becoming a god yourself, and like the creation aspect and like making something out of something else was very like Adam and Eve to me, you know?
Yeah. Like, again, for a bright, funny Nintendo kids-oriented game, there's a lot of religious and military and other kinds of interesting themes going on in this game. And
Yeah.
that like, I'm like, this, it's, to me, it's like a perfect example of a good Pixar movie or something like that, where it's not just good for kids, right? Like they can enjoy the bright colors and maybe the broad strokes of the story, and then you're a grown up, you can be moved by the more nuanced elements of it too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It gives me a lot of Avatar vibes as well, especially with the elemental stuff that they added in. I've just been watching Avatar.
Nice.
So it felt like some of the world building was kind of based around that, which I found pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this post on, but like I mentioned the military thing. I don't know if you saw this on Reddit, but somebody really broke down Bobby's story as like a vet who had PTSD. Did you see that?
No, please explain it a
So
little.
like, they're like, this has to be intentional, right? Because, you know, it's a pretty common trope that fireworks are a PTSD inducing thing for soldiers. And he remembers who he is during fireworks explosion. And I don't remember all the other things they laid out, but it was pretty convincing to me that if not intentional, it's a crazy coincidence. Some of the stuff that they did with, you know, he just being bomb moms are just grunt soldiers, right? And they kind of reinforce that in a couple of different places in the story. And like, that, you know, his sort of arc of like dealing with that is sort of like, you know, a vet with issues, which I really thought was fascinating because, you know, you have his whole story and then later you're shooting bomb bombs as out of the plane to like, I don't know. I just feel like
that was crazy to me actually. Like at the end, like I felt really kind of weird about that.
Right.
Cause first of all, I just want to say I loved that shooting section. I thought the motion controls worked really, really well in that part of the game. It made me kind of realize, like I've also played Panzer Dragoon recently and I was like, the remake, we'll talk about that this upcoming week, but like the shooting in that feels like terrible in Paper Mario. I was like, this feels incredible. Well, but that was a mindfuck, right? Like after having gone through that journey with Bobby, then to just sacrifice like thousands of these things.
Right.
The game just like gets in your craw and makes you think. And that's why I wouldn't put it past, the writers of the game or the localization team, to tie it to PTSD and like shell shock in that way, you know? And I think that, there was just a lot of really grown up stuff. And like I said, the spirituality stuff, there was like, I thought that there was a great moment in there when, you know, where you're getting into the Earthfall Elemental Temple and it's like the commodification of like religious iconography and stuff like that. And like, and not just that, there were lots of characters that were trying to make a buck off of something and in shady ways that were like very illuminating. I'm thinking of like Shangri Spa as well.
And then Snippet Town too, like
right.
The genie lamp guy. But to the thing you were just saying too, right? Like that sort of surface level religion of the Earth Elemental where like you go into the shrine and the first 10 things feel cheesy or whatever, and then you can just knock that down and actually experience the like deeper level of things. I think that's like a very you know, clear you know, allegory for surface level religion or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
Or any, you know, spirituality or whatever.
So I think, I mean, and like I said, maybe a lot of the other Paper Mario games are like this, but if you're listening to this and you like haven't played the game, like at this point, hopefully you're like, oh, I should play this because I think and we'll get to actual like our thoughts on the game here in a second, because I do want to talk about some gameplay stuff and some stuff that really irked me. But like, you know, the story and the whole feel of the world and just the immaculate like detail that they've put into the environments and everything that really all fill in the story. Like this is a great game that shows like how environment design can help with storytelling, right? But yeah, please just know, even if we're about to say some bad stuff about the game, you should still play this. I was very, very impressed with this game.
Well, and maybe before we move on to that, one sort of last character story thing I wanted to talk about is Kamek, especially.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I feel like they did an amazing job with Kamek in this game. Maybe you feel differently, but at least from my perspective, all of Kamek's lines and like, I don't know, you think of Kamek as just, you know, in the Yoshi games or whatever, he may make some remarks about how his life's difficult working for these people, but it was just such a like interesting characterization to see Kamek working with Mario and kind of like, it's nice to be respected for once and like all these kind of things. Like,
yeah, it shows that like, I just like that he was always incredible. He was just really, really good at his job other than when he like was a coward.
Right.
Like he would be a coward and run, but even then it's like what's made him survive for so long, you know, like, and I just loved that every time he was correct in the directions that you needed to go in that one area of Shangri-Spa. Like, he was one of my favorite,
side characters.
Yeah, what are they called?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. The characters that go with you into battle. I agree. He was definitely the best.
I wish there were more of those in the game, honestly.
And to a lesser extent, I felt that way about Bowser Jr. and Bowser, that the writing for those characters, but again, Kamek more so, was really great, and that Kamek almost had a little bit of a unique arc. You know, like a little bit of a character arc as opposed to like not just being one note like he normally is. But
yeah, and it's nice at the end he wasn't just like nobody respects me, but he was like happy that he was able to do his job and that his dad was able to get his son back. You know what I mean? Like he takes pride in his work, and it was just like it was just kind of a nice little you're right. It had a little bow on it. It was very nice indeed.
But you mentioned maybe some of the gameplay and other stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, I think to me, one of the strongest points about this game from a gameplay aspect is just the variedness of the gameplay. Like you may be critical, I don't mean you, but listener or anybody, of the ring battle. I actually kind of liked it, but like, but there was also so many other things going on, and some of it was hard. Like to me at least, like, I don't know, like that snippet, I think it was snippet game show that happened.
There were a couple really difficult ones in there. The hardest ones in there were the ones where you had to like, you had to count, which was already hard because everything was obscured by clouds. And then you had to like, not only have the right number, but then make an equation while also moving the things around and getting them in one spot.
I would be like, I know it's 17, but I see an 8 and an equals. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what do I?
I think my main problem is that I forgot that you can slide tiles outside of regular battles for the longest time. So like, I only slid tiles during boss battles, like in the last boss battle.
I am in the same boat.
Because I was just so used to spinning them, and I think honestly, like I love what they were trying to do with the battle system, but let's just talk about it, because like I never really mastered it,
right?
You know what I mean? And you know, even towards the end, and as they were getting harder too, like I liked that they got more difficult, but I was having to call in Toads to help like every single time. Towards the end, there are a couple that I would get and I would feel great, but I was like, also that one felt like it was dumber than the last few. So like, well, I did like by the end of the game, like really start to resent battling. I was just kind of trying to get the game over with at a certain point, and it felt almost like a chore every time I had to get into it. But you might have a different experience.
Well, I think and I could be wrong, this may not have been what they were going for, but I kind of think it is that you are trying to avoid enemies on the map, right? Like I think if you play it with that in mind, instead of like, I'm going to clear out every enemy and every screen, like I'm just trying to get to do all the things I need to do, you know, fill in all the holes, get all the toads, and avoid the enemies, that approach, it almost feels like the game is geared towards that, because there are places where, you know, like there's crabs moving across, and it's like, I feel like it definitely is trying to get you to do that, especially once you get up to a certain level, you could just kill the enemies with your hammer. Right.
And that's what I love doing. And I did try to avoid them. I mean, at some points towards the end, I started attacking all the enemies just because that's what my brain tells me to do in a video game. You know what I mean? And I was just like kind of like in autopilot in the last couple castles. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the game is geared that way. But I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe it just needed like a slightly better tutorial section in teaching you to slide, especially because like in the final battle, when you have to make the like 4-part big hand sign on the ground, that took, and then if you fuck up, and it only gives you 40 seconds, and it's like, and if you fuck up, then you just get one shot KO'd and it's game over. And they let you fortunately, they let you redo just that section
from
again.
That section.
Yeah, specifically on that. But I tried that 8 times. And I almost was like, I'm just going to quit this game. I eventually had to stop and really track it out and figure everything out. And just that to me, when the pressure was on and the timer was counting down and you couldn't extend the timer, I was like, man, at this point, I feel like I'm being punished right now, and I just wish that there was some kind of better balance, I guess, between the action combat and the puzzle solving, because it made it to the point where you picking what you're doing to do with your attack means nothing almost. It's just about getting there.
Yeah. It's a giant muddy mix of gameplay, it feels like. And like you said, I actually think there's a lot of hard stuff in this game. For everybody that's complaining, oh, it's too easy. It's funny, you were talking about using toads. I really didn't use toads at all. In fact, I didn't even realize that you could hold down the button to get more than one toad to come out until late in the game.
I would only ever do over 100 toads.
So what I would do instead is I just would have lots of shiny boots. And you know what I mean? Have longer battles and stuff, right. With better items.
See, I always felt like I wanted. So whenever I would do the toads, it would show me the first move, right? And then I'd usually be able to figure it out from there. But I just hated the feeling of not getting them all lined up correctly. And it takes longer to do, and you're wasting stuff. And it just felt like such a punishment that I was I was eventually being, and on every boss battle, I would just get the hint from Olivia too. So I'd basically, I just think the game punishes you too much for fucking up. Sometimes and that would happen a lot with saves too, or I'd have to go back and do full stuff again because they've introduced a new mechanic at the very end and not really explained it. And that, and maybe I don't know, maybe that I don't. It's weird that I'm asking for it to be slightly easier, I guess.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paper Mario's easy game. These battles are super easy. I don't know. Some of this was really arcane, like you're talking about, and hard.
But I just think all the parts that pissed me off really were when I would make one choice between one of two ways, and then it would be game over. You know what I mean? And that just didn't feel super fair. And it didn't feel earned because the whole game was pretty easy up to the end of the game, where all of a sudden you just start getting the game over screen constantly.
And I mentioned that Sniffit town where there's that genie guy. That definitely I gamed over there, where it's do you want to? I can't even remember haggle, or do you want to go in the lamp? And I'm I want to go in the lamp because that's where Luigi is, and I'm gonna free him. And then it's game over, and I'm what? That's cheap.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's supposed to make you feel like that, honestly, and because they talk about it, it's dude, this dude's sketchy. It's gonna be fucked up, But yeah, that whole area was pretty fun and lively. It had that Vegas vibe, right?
Yes, totally. The desert. Oh, maybe we talk a little bit about that. Just the environments you talked about were really great. I think the ocean and the desert in particular stand out to me as being fun to explore, maybe a little tedious at times, but making me feel dumb. I felt super dumb in the desert because I was trying to do the puzzle, but I was trying to do a step ahead of what I needed to do. And I can't even remember, I'm going to the towers and being how the fuck do I light these things? Why can't I do this?
Which is intentional, right? They're there as you walk in. I think they're trying to throw you by having the stuff there early before they give you instructions.
And I read all the things, and it's you need to go do the ritual. And I'm I did the ritual. I just it.
And you had your son breathing down your neck too, so you're stressed out.
Yeah, exactly. And he's look it up. Let's just look it up. And I'm no, we're gonna figure this out. And it's just an order of operations that I had wrong in my head. And I think that's the kind of thing maybe where you're talking about too, of there might be there might have been better explanation at some of parts of this game.
The thing is, though, it's like you were saying before, the game is so varied.
Yes.
It really does do a lot of different stuff. And it's and I went into it knowing that this wasn't a standard RPG, and that it wasn't going to have the standard RPG leveling system and all that kind of stuff. And so I was aware of that. So it doesn't make me upset that there weren't more RPG mechanics. I liked that the game was trying a bunch of different stuff. It just came at the cost of like being able to keep up sometimes or really know what the game wants you to do because it has you doing so much different kinds of shit. But at the end of the day, I'll accept that, I think, because that's what I think is the best thing about Paper Mario: The Origami King is that it feels so fresh and just good to play. Like whenever it does reward you, the reward feels really good and satisfying. Whenever you get that item that you need, or you get when you and I was ragging a little bit on the motion controls, and there were a couple of problems I think I had with the motion controls. Like I thought it was a little unnecessary, but when you finally get to the motion control area and you do it right, it feels fucking good, right?
Yeah.
So I'll take a game that's trying new stuff and is unique with its premise any day. It just didn't feel stale at all to me, which I thought was really nice.
Totally. I think gamers a lot of times are critical of things that are trying new things because, the first time you try something new, it might not work great. And I know that's what they want to do with Paper Mario. That's something they say, right? They always want to mix it up. Right. And I think like some of the RPG elements that people are clamoring for in a game like this, I'm not sure that those are like great things. We're just used to them and they give you that little dopamine hit when your character levels up. But I'm not sure that that's the perfect way to do games or something.
I mean, I'm pretty bad at finishing RPGs. I mean, I like the classic JRPG setup. I've started a bunch of JRPGs because I always want to play them. But it's really hard for me to finish a lot of the times, because when you have to grind and do stuff like that, it kind of weighs down my soul. But this was like a great length, if honestly like a little long for me. Like it definitely felt at times, this game does that thing where you think you're about to go into a building and then it's like, oh, we need the key. But in order to get the key, we have to like do this whole power, wisdom, and the whole Zelda thing they had going on. And it's just, there's always something standing in your way. And like, there were definitely times where I was like, please just let me in the fucking door.
It got a little cliche and almost maybe, I wish they had almost maybe made fun of themselves a little bit more on the third or fourth time they did that. And that could have maybe made it more palatable.
There was one joke towards the end in, I think Ollie's like version, the origami version of Princess Peach's castle. Mm-hmm. There's like a door to the right, and then and I think it's Luigi or Bowser Jr. or whoever's with you. Like the door doesn't open, and they're like, "Oh, I bet they're gonna patch that room in later." Yeah, so totally. Lazy or something like that. And I was like, "Man, I wish this game was more self-referential." Anyway, I think that it's cool that Paper Mario has become this franchise that they can just try out some shit with. Right. You know what I mean? And I hope that they take the good lessons from what worked in this and not the bad ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised by it overall. And
me too.
Yeah. It was so, and not just varied in the gameplay, but varied in the environments and the kinds of characters you meet. It was just like a fucking snack. And then let's talk real quick about the music, maybe.
Okay.
Because I was absolutely in love with the soundtrack.
Yes.
And in the credits too, they had all the individual instruments that all the people played. And it was like, man, they really recorded this with real instruments, and it really shows, and it gave it such a nice vibe, I thought.
Yes.
You have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's been a little longer since I've played it, so I can't hear it in my head, but I do remember really enjoying the music aspect of the game, and I've heard some people say that maybe the like Toad Town music isn't very good, but I
disagree.
I thought all the music was good. There was nothing that bothered me, and I talked about it when we recorded our episode. I still think it's really weird how they had that karaoke song in there.
Yeah. They also brought it in later in the Sniffit game show. I don't know if you got that question.
I don't know if I did either. I think
you,
so. Like, what
it
are the lyrics
asks you like what the
it?
tree said, and I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to? I looked that one up. Yeah,
totally. That's what I was like. When I went through that Sniffit game show, I looked at my son because we got down to the wire, and I was like, I don't think we're gonna win this. You know what I mean? Like, then I pulled through with like the last one, barely got us however many points you needed.
Did you do the sudden death, or were you like, fuck that?
I think I said fuck that.
I did it. It wasn't that hard.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I think because it made me like, it was so stressful getting through that.
I was stressed too, for sure.
Like that counting game, man. I counted everyone. I knew the right number. And then you get to that ring and it's like, none of these numbers add up to what I want them to.
Yeah, it's like, what's the integer of the
yeah, the square root.
Yeah. But yeah, I love the music so much. And I just loved a lot of the vocal aspects of it. Like I'm glad that this game wasn't like he's paper and he's flying, because like every Nintendo game now has to have some lyrics for some reason, and they could have done that with the
they wrote them apparently.
Yeah. If you go on YouTube, there are videos of guys singing along, which is funny. But I'm talking more about like when you get to like Shangri-Spa and you've got the kind of choir in the background. Like it had this really nice warmth to it, and I think, and the Toad Town theme, how it would transition between the normal town and when you go into the museum, and it's like the lower piano theme. I just thought it was really, really great stuff towards the end. And some of the battle songs, some of the boss battles for the like art supplies were really, really good too. So yeah, I was just really impressed. I hope whoever did the soundtrack keeps working with the franchise or on future stuff.
And I know we probably want to wrap up pretty soon, but like, I think sometimes I feel like this is maybe my experience of this too, was how negative people are. Like, it's like when you go to see a movie and everybody's like, oh, that movie sucks. And you go in with low expectations versus when everybody's like, it's the best movie ever. And you go in with high expectations. That can affect you. I don't know if that was a big part of this for me, but I got this game because we do this podcast and because I thought it would be fun to play with my son. And then I was like, man, this game has been one of my favorite games of the last while. I was just not expecting this to hit me in so many different ways, like to be so funny, to be so varied in its gameplay, in good and bad ways. But like, you can't have varied gameplay without some some misses. I feel like, what I mean?
Right.
And then the feels, like I like I said, the Bobby and Olivia stuff really stuck with me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that for having the limitation of what you can do with the Mario characters, they made it into something that used the Mario stuff in a very unique way. You know, like I think the kind of fractal folding in on itself of the world, like literally with the origami stuff, like really made you look at like Mario characters in a different way, and it like the enemies and Bowser's minions and shit like that. Like, and there were some deep cuts, like, there were charging chucks and there were all these like weird niche Super Mario World villains that you got to see in this like really kind of scary way. But yeah, I just think, I hope that they keep trying out stuff, honestly. If it means that we're going to get some stinkers with like, I don't know, Sticker Star is supposed to be really bad. Yeah. Whatever. I'm happy with it. I think that, I think it's a great game.
Yeah. With that level and attention to the detail of writing, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if Sticker Star must not have had as good a writing, I feel like, or maybe just the gameplay was so boring or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I do think, what would you think about them going even more action RPG with the series? I
think for all that I defended the ring battles, I think that the battles where you fight a boss and its action style were so much better. Like the giant octopus and the giant
that was really
pokey in the desert. Those felt like those, maybe again, if they're going to go for varied gameplay, then keep it varied. But like for your average encounter, it would have been much more fun to hit people with the hammer in the moment rather than go into that battle. I think
like the problem is like, cause I agree with you and I would prefer that for the next Paper Mario game. Cause I'm like gonna play these games now. Cause I like this one. But I think, wouldn't that like piss off people so much?
Yeah.
Isn't that the opposite of what they want? Don't they want bug fables, right? Like, they want like that standard RPG fare.
I don't know that they know what they want. I'm sure they're listening to this and all pissed off. But
I don't think any Nintendo fans really know what they want.
It's that problem of Nintendo being, kid oriented, and we all grew up with it, and it's hard to like, you want it to change, but you want it to stay the same. And what do you want? I don't know,
Yeah. Well, I guess before we wrap up, did your kid like this game? Did the story resonate with him?
He did. In terms of, it's tough because he can't read yet. And so such a big part of this game is reading. And
did you read out loud everything?
I did. And that was tough. Man. That's tough. And I felt like, when I read out loud stuff to him in a game, especially, I might shorten it, especially in that game where it's so much. And that was a hard aspect of me playing through this with him, because it's like reading everything out loud. And
it's like 35 hours of reading out loud.
Yes, exactly. But nonetheless, he really, I think it's that colorfulness of it and the variedness of it. And he's got a really good eye for things. It's kind of embarrassing, but also amazing how occasionally a 5-year-old will solve a puzzle that I'm sitting there banging my head, or he'll be like, that looks just like that thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That is that thing. That's the connection. And that's how we figure this out.
Well, that's also the mastery of the environment designers in this game. They just like cued you to where you need to go unconsciously the whole time. Really, really well designed levels in this game.
But I don't know if it was the same as playing like a Luigi's Mansion where there's not as much reading, or the reading didn't matter as much, you know what I mean? But so
Nintendo, if you're listening, here's what we want. We want you to take out the turn-based battles. We want you to take out all the words. Just make the music a remix of the original soundtrack.
Just basically a platformer.
Yeah. Basically, we want you to make new Super Mario Brothers. No, I think that they should keep doing. I think they should keep paying intelligent systems to make what they want. You know, and if it means having a little bit of restriction on it, we've seen that they can still, sometimes restriction and guidelines can help with creativity and really make you eke something out. And I think that's what they've done here. And I think it was really great. I
think that's where like the whole like lesser known Mario enemies and stuff really came in and shined in this game. Is like they can't do anything crazy with Mario, Luigi, or Bowser, but they can, you know, make a snippet have a lot of character or whatever. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's so much more I want to talk about, but because there was like a lot in that game. But I'm also kind of like forgetting a lot of like the great moments just because there were so many. Yeah,
totally. It is how long did it take you to beat? Do you know what your Switch showed?
It said over 35 hours.
Okay, yeah. So like we kind of rushed through it and we played it on my son's account and it was 25 or more.
Oh, wow.
So I you know, because he didn't have patience for me to fill in all the gaps when it wasn't necessary. And
well, I was thinking that because I mean, I think it's some of the stuff that felt like a slog for me. If I just powered through, it'd probably be a bit more fun.
Yeah,
I think, but then every single toad that you pull out and every single secret you uncover gives you a fucking dopamine rush, and you want to find all of them and be a completionist.
And you get that little hit, and that's maybe that sort of level up when it's like, you know, all the toads in Shogun Studios found or whatever. You're like,
right?
Then you're like, I can do this.
Pump that shit right into my fucking veins.
Totally. But again, like 2020 is a weird year for games, and I would actually have to do some reflection to decide where this falls for me. But it's definitely up there in terms of, especially Nintendo games or something like it. You know, there aren't that many. There's like Animal Crossing and that, but like, and maybe even the last couple of years, I'd put this, you know, solidly under Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey or something. You know what I mean? Like in that next tier down or whatever that is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was getting too frustrated with too much towards the end of the game, for me to put it up there with that exactly. But regardless, like it made me feel good for most of the time.
Yeah.
I think towards the end, I was just kind of feeling beat down by some of the, especially just the ring puzzles at the end that were like required, in order to beat it. And then like I failed multiple times at like stopping the thwomp from hitting me in the like Zelda trial section of the game.
Oh my
gosh.
What I mean? That was hard.
I just had to do that over and over and over again. And I was like,
that's
and then it's like, hey,
really hard.
Yeah. It's like, hey, idiot, you want to pay $1,000 to us make it 100% easier for you. So like that stuff didn't make me feel too good, but
that thwomp thing was really difficult for me too. Like I had to pay the money and
I had to put it down for a bit after that. Actually.
Yeah, it does make you feel bad. It's weird because like I do wonder, like, you know, if you are, I don't know, 9 years old, do you get past some of that stuff? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I think your will is strong. I think you're broken less easy.
That's true.
If you're a child.
I do. Now that you say that, I do remember, you know, Zelda dungeons when I was that age and just not giving up.
Now we can just like go make a fucking cocktail to drink away our sorrows. But when you're a kid, you have to beat the game. But anyway, is there anything you wanted to say to close this out? This kind of a silly Paper Mario ramble here.
No, I think, if you're listening and you have a different experience because all the other old Paper Mario games, I understand that, but for a newcomer to the series, man, this was a great introduction to it to me without any baggage. I'm, like you said, especially the first Paper Mario was on the Nintendo 64, right?
Yeah.
So if they ever add that to like an NSO app or something, I'd definitely check it out. I'd like to know now that I'm here, I'm like, I'd be curious what those early ones were like.
you should play Super Mario RPG as well if you haven't.
I've never played that either. I remember being a kid and was wanting to, and I just never did.
The DNA is all in these Paper Mario games. That's the first Paper Mario game, really.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. But we both like the game. It's a hard recommend from us. Thanks so much for listening to this spoiler discussion. Glad you were able to get some of that stuff off your chest there, Patrick.
Yeah,
I know it was eating you up inside.
That was good. It's good to talk about it.
And it was good that we did this because then it means I actually beat the game. I was like, there's actually a reason for me to beat it. And it was good. I'm glad I did. It had a very nice ending.
Yes.
And I felt good for doing it.
Yes.
Folks, thanks so much for listening to this episode. We'll be back Wednesday with a normal episode of Super Switch Headz with a guest and news topics and stuff like that. Until then, please join our Facebook and our Discord groups. We'll have those in the description. And you can find me online at Monolith Fiji.
I am PDYX.
And we are at Switch Headz on Twitter and at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We love you guys very much. We'll see you Wednesday. Bye-bye.